It's like 5 in the morning. Almost about to be 6. I gotta wake up in an hour and a half. I'm unemployed. I don't know what I'm doing. But here we are. Let's do this fucking thing. So this would be like, I don't know, re-recording number 7, reattempt number 10, script number 3, 4, 5. I've lost count of the amount of times I've tried to solidify my thoughts in a way that I was generally happy with, because I have needed to do this follow-up video for Silent Hill 2 for quite some time. I've absolutely needed to do it. I promise it. I'm pretty sure I did. And even if I didn't, it's still one of my most successful videos. And generally speaking, I feel kind of bad that it was so vitriolic and hate-fueled and just incredibly negative. And to have that on my channel with no follow-up now months on after the fact, where it's sort of kind of went through this renaissance of people really enjoying it, and we ended up finding out it was nowhere near the dumpster fire we thought it was going to be. I think I owe it to everybody who's either subbed or is going to watch that video as they, you know, look for Silent Hill content, that if there is a follow-up, it should be there. But I can't, for the life of me, sit there and try to give people a hugely positive review of it. Not because I think the game is bad by any stretch of the imagination. I think it's good. I think that this was a Herculean level of effort that they put out, and this is probably one of the best things that Bloober Team has ever done in the entirety of their standing as a developer. But the fact of the matter remains is that there is some kind of feeling I have when I look at the remake. I've now done 2 playthroughs, 1 for myself and 2 for the footage you're about to see on screen. And both times, it's like there was something missing. Some kind of je ne sais quoi that I couldn't really put my finger on, that made the experience feel kind of hollow in comparison. And I don't know if that's largely just a me thing, or if there's something that game just ultimately lacks that I think that the OG makes up for in spades. If I can I say that anymore? Whatever. The fact of the matter remains is I just don't really like the remake as much as I wanted to. And I was kind of worried about that. Because when I released that video last year, I felt pretty strongly about it. I scripted everything out. It was like the one video I was really proud of. I edited it all myself, which is, you know, kind of a feat for me. And it ended up doing really well. It did pretty good for me. And it boosted my confidence, and it made me feel like, you know, this content creation thing was something that I could absolutely dedicate time and effort to. That being said, yeah, as much as I wanted the game to be good, I did end it with the notion that the game should 100% be good, and if it is, I will come back and, you know, sing its praises. I'm not opposed to eating crow. I'm not opposed to taking an L. I could fill up a small community pool with the amount of piss takes I've taken in my entire life. But I just didn't also want to be a huge negative Nancy. I didn't want to be the one guy, the super contrarian, but I can't keep lying to myself. I can't keep trying to, you know, get blood from a stone. This is just not the game I wanted, and I don't enjoy it anywhere near as much as I do the OG. And honestly, it's only a couple of things that are really stopping that from happening, but it's these things are so significant in how they affect it that I genuinely, like, if they just fix those things, this would, I think, be an incredible game all around. But I can't bring myself to admit that. I have to hold myself accountable and let people know that it's nowhere near the shitfire it is, but at the same time, I have to just be real with y'all. It is lacking something. It is just not hitting all the right notes it needs to. But it doesn't mean it's bad. I don't know. Let's try to explain that a little bit. Let's try to expound on that misery, I guess, for a moment. So the OG is really important. I think it's probably one of the most prolific horror games of all time. Everyone can pretty much point to Silent Hill 2 as being largely one of the most influential pieces of work, pieces of media within the horror medium ever created. And because of that, it holds a really special place in my heart. I may not be the biggest Silent Hill fan in particular. I've played through 3 of the OG titles and to have had my time with both Downpour and Homecoming, but I wouldn't go out of my way to say that I'm the biggest Silent Hill fan. But as far as 2 and 3 goes, those games in particular occupy really, like, just got a little lockbox in my heart. Lock that away, it's for me. I love those games. So this remake existing and being as good as it is, I should be screaming from the rooftops and singing its praises and talking about how Bloober Team actually pulled it off. And I will admit that they did pull it off. I will even go as far as to admit that the stuff that was added, like a lot of the additional writing, the additional scenes, the ending that they added was pretty good. The UFO ending in particular, fantastic. I love it. But man, I think the only thing I can liken it to is that feeling where you watch a movie that was clearly just, it went through the Hollywood ringer, where this was a foreign film that did relatively well. It was like a hit with the Oscars or something. And then some studio over here in Hollywood's like, well, why don't we just go ahead and remake that for the masses over here? Completely rewrite certain elements so it has characters, mostly white characters, and just try to retune the original message to appeal more to the American or Western sensibilities. And that's not entirely the case with this one. It is a little unfair to say that this is exactly what happened there, because there are people who worked in the OG team who were working on this game as well. There is still the touch of the OG Team Silent there, and it is very good, and I like it a lot. But I just... the direction that they went with, and the writing and the acting, as good as it all ends up being, alongside a couple of different like gameplay caveats that I really, really don't like, ultimately make the experience kind of just fall flat on the space for me. So let's get into that. So like I said, I think that they did a really spectacular job of pretty much modernizing this game's script and rewriting it for a generation that would otherwise find the OG's acting and writing appropriately cringe. There's a lot more of a grounded feeling in a lot of the characters that you meet. People feel like genuine human beings with real problems. They aren't like massive caricatures of mental illness. They have things that they say. They have thoughts and feelings, and they will let you know them post haste. And everyone does a really spectacular job of bringing these characters to life in a whole new way. Special shout outs to Luke Roberts. I think it's probably one of the best. Not that there's been many interpretations or many performances. I guess there have been at least 2 in history between Guy Seehey and Troy Baker, but he is absolutely my favorite James Sunderland through and through. That if anyone is going to ask me who I would get to play that guy in any like movie capacity, it would 100% be Luke Roberts. He knocked it out of the park. He brought a new vulnerability that I hadn't seen before in James' overall performance that was unparalleled, and it is incredible. That is the one thing I will say. I will tell anybody, please go play the remake to go see that man's performance. He fucking killed it. And everyone else did a really spectacular job too, and even the lady who played Maria/Mary, she did as good as she could given the direction she was given. But there's 100% of a few things I will nitpick the fuck out of with her character in particular a little later on that do 100% drive my the way that I'm feeling about this whole affair. So We'll get there, and we'll cross the bridge when we get there. This is also like one of the best looking games I've ever seen. I don't know where this art team was. I know that Bloober team is generally, most Bloober games have been pretty good, all things considered. But my god, the amount of budget they were given to make this game look as good as it does is incredible. It's one of the best looking games of the generation, let alone of all of video games. I mean, the motion capture alone is brilliant. It brings a whole new layer to these characters, a whole new kind of performance and art to it that I kind of wish was in the OG. I wish that they kind of had this sort of technology. The OG honestly did a really good job with the facial expressions and the overall animations already. There are things that are very timeless about it, and I'm glad to say that the remake pretty much follows upon that in a spectacular way and makes everything look really good. It's also the best interpretation of Silent Hill I've seen in a very long time. I fucking hate Homecoming. I fucking hate Downpour. I think those games are kind of just horrifyingly bad. I think that their interpretations of Silent Hill are completely missing the point, and I feel like any developers outside of the original Team Silent have just not been able to properly represent that town in the way that it needed to be represented for ages at this point. And yet somehow Bloober Team pulled it off. Bloober Team, the team that I have all of the fucking hate in my heart for, were the ones that were able to pull it together and create the best iteration of this town I've ever seen. It is actually, you do have to play the remake to really get the feeling of it. They nailed the sound, the look, the atmosphere. It is a through the whole core of it, and a spectacular rendition of Silent Hill. And if they're given another crack at it, I'd love to see what they do with like something like a 3 or a 1 even. That, you know, but at the same time, we'll see what you know. We'll get to that. And yeah, all things considered, pretty much every singular aspect of the game's puzzles has been sort of redone or renewed in an entirely new way, and I think that they executed on that very well. I also love the callbacks to old school puzzle solutions, where you walk into a room and you kind of look at an object where a solution would be, and you kind of touch it, and it's like, oh wow, that's like a memory of the OG. It's a neat little addition that they did. And for all intents and purposes, I love the idea that they kind of hardcore confirmed the loop theory. That's really neat too. The UFO ending, spectacular. There's a lot of things to like about this game, but I just, you know, these couple of things I'm about to bring up just hold it back for me from me just saying like, yeah, you should go ahead and play it throughout the whole thing. It's like really good. As much as I like the direction, I have to say, like I talked about earlier with the Western interpretation of like a foreign film, that rings so true in this game's overall direction, in the acting, and because of that, there is a certain sauce that is removed from these scenes that would otherwise be very impactful. Say what you will about how the original approached the acting, whether or not it was intentional, whether or not the writing was just bad for the time's sake, there was something so magical about how all those elements kind of work together to create this really ethereal feeling, to facilitate a world that felt alien and just dark and eldritch in every single way, and I loved it. It is one of my favorite parts of Silent Hill 2. And yes, you can laugh at a lot of the direction and a lot of the delivery, but I genuinely feel like if you allow yourself to fall into what the game is trying to do, there's going to be something there for everybody that they're going to really enjoy. That isn't really in the remake, because everyone just sounds like a normal human being now. And they sell that really well. They sound like normal human beings with problems, but it does kind of fundamentally change the way that I feel about that game's overall vibe and the tonality and the atmosphere. It takes a lot of it away and sort of, replaces it with a much more grittier kind of like Netflix version it's not as bad as like a Netflix abridged version, right? But it's kind of in that same vein where you're like, man, this is just a you know, prettied up version of something that was so much, in my eyes, so much better because of the flaws. You know, you remove the flaws, you remove the character, you remove a lot of the sauce that was happening within those scenes, and it kind of leads into the direction of two really pivotal scenes for me with the Mary/Maria character. And those two scenes are the Pyramid Head vivisection, where she's in the elevator and she dies, and then James subsequently finding her later on in the basement of that, I believe it's the prison. I think it's the prison or the area right after it. What was it called? The lake house? I forget. But yeah, that first scene with Pyramid Head and everyone's running in the OG, you can see that when James finally gets to the elevator and he's trying to get Maria to get in there, and he can't open up the doors, Maria is afeared for her life. She is screaming bloody murder. She is just letting it fly, and she is like, oh man, oh my god, yelling, until finally Pyramid Head does what he does best, and he just plunges the blade into her, and she screams bloody murder and dies. And James is left there, you know, holding the bag in the elevator going, fuck me, brother, what do I do now?
Open up!
And it's a really, for me, incredibly impactful scene, and the conveyance of Maria needing that protector, and then, you know, James ultimately failing to do so. It was fantastic. But in the remake, it's so much more muted by comparison, because the direction that she was given was she's just kind of low-key struggling a little bit, and you hear her going, like, trying to squeeze into the elevator. But they do that thing that I think it's like a awful cliche in horror movies nowadays. I think it can kind of work sometimes, but it's gotten so fucking played out where the person gets stabbed or like you clearly hurt from behind, and this look of disbelief is on their face, like they're in a state of pure shock. And then they get pulled out into the darkness, and that's literally what happens with her in that scene.
Come on, hurry!
And it did not hit anywhere near as hard for me. I did not feel anywhere near as bad. Luke Roberts 100% killed it with his acting after that fact, but it changed that scene and that character to such an extent that it was just like jarring for me. I was like, okay, like it was almost comedic. I remember kind of laughing at it the first time it happened. I was like, wow, that's okay. It's like she barely even cared that was happening. Cool. Really glad that they did that for some fucking reason. And then the ultimate scene, the one where you encounter Maria downstairs, and in the OG it is one of my favorite scenes because it is a fantastic showcase of why I think that the OG's overall like voice direction, the acting and the writing works so well to disarming the audience and making them, you know, fall further and further into this sort of eldritch alien landscape. And you're sitting there and James is first trying to figure out why she's alive, how is she alive, and Maria just seems completely out of it. She's sitting down in a particular style, almost akin to Mary, and then she starts speaking sweet nothings to James, and James is getting confused. And then when he calls her out on it, she shifts mannerisms, she shifts personalities and starts talking like Maria, and she's moving in and out of it, and you can see her face morphing to fit the character, and they take so much more time to show her face literally changing ever so slightly to kind of fit the mannerisms of each character, and it is a spectacular scene. And it's so good because they beat you over the head with it, because if they made this any subtler, it would 100% take away from it.
You're alive! Maria, I thought that thing killed you. Are you hurt bad?
Not at all, silly.
Maria? That thing, it stabbed you. There was blood everywhere.
Stabbed me? What do you mean?
It chased us to the elevator, and then...
James, what are you talking about?
Just before! Don't you remember?
James, honey, did something happen to you? After we got separated in that long hallway? Are you confusing me with someone else? You were always so forgetful. Remember that time in the hotel?
Maria?
You said you took everything, but you forgot that videotape we made. I wonder if it's still there.
How do you know about that? Aren't you Maria?
I'm not your Mary.
So, you're Maria?
I am. If you want me to be.
All I want from you is an answer.
It doesn't matter who I am. I'm here for you, James. See? I'm real. Don't you want to touch me?
I don't know.
Come and get me. I can't do anything through these bars.
Okay. Stay right there. I'll be there soon.
And thankfully now we have the remake to kind of prove that, because in the remake it is far more muted and far more subtle by comparison, and the direction they gave the actor, for whatever reason, was to sort of just kind of sit there a little bit. She's nowhere near as animated as she is as she shifts between the roles. The intonation and the tone of her voice barely changes. Nothing changes anywhere near as frequently as the back and forth did in the OG, and it completely disarms that. Like makes that scene feel so much more different and far less engaging and far less impactful. And I hate it. I think it's the worst fucking thing. I think that, you know, they really needed to knock it out of the park with that one, and all I got was a milquetoast interpretation.
Maria! I thought that thing killed you. Are you hurt?
Not at all, silly.
But the thing... It stabbed you. There was blood everywhere.
Stabbed me? What do you mean?
It chased us to the elevator and then...
James, what are you talking about?
Just before. Don't you remember?
James? Honey? Did something happen to you? After we got separated in that long hallway? Are you confusing me with someone else? You were always so forgetful. Remember that time in the hotel?
Maria?
You said you took everything. But you forgot that videotape we made. I wonder if it's still there.
How do you know about that? Aren't you Maria?
I'm not your Mary.
So you are Maria.
I am. If you want me to be.
All I want from you is an answer.
Doesn't matter who I am. I am here for you, James. See? I'm real. Don't you want to touch me?
I don't know.
Well. If you happen to make up your mind. I'll be waiting.
I'll find some way to... I'll come back, I promise.
You know, I side with Gareth Marenge from that one series. I know writers who use subtext and they're all cowards type shit. I don't know if you guys have seen that one. It's very funny.
I know writers who use subtext and they're all cowards. Okay? What I was asking in that scene is, what if politicians continue to pay doctors peanuts? Could they literally turn into monkeys? And no one's asked that before.
But yeah, that scene kind of exemplified a lot of the things that I didn't like about the remake, where it felt like there was a little bit... I don't want to pull a Croby cat here and say soul versus soulless, because there was clearly a passion here. I will give it to Bloober Team. They absolutely are passionate about the product. They're passionate about the brand, the franchise itself. They wanted to create the best version of this game that they possibly could. And for all intents and purposes, they did a really bang-up job of that. But that right there is such like an exemplary point where I'm like, man, God, this is just not, it's not the same. It's not the same. And the only reason why I hate it so much is because I know the problem is twofold, right? Where Konami is really bad when it comes to game preservation. The fact that they allowed GOG at all to put Silent Hill 4 up on their website pretty recently is a good enough sign that they might try to do the rest for the series, but for right now, there is no better way to experience the original without some form of piracy. And I would even argue, at this point, just fucking do it, because Konami doesn't want the goddamn money and they're not going to do anything to help you out, so just fucking go ahead and get it done, you know? Because it is... You need to play the OG. The remake is just not a good enough replacement. And I don't think it was trying to be. They clearly wanted to make it supplementary to the OG, But there are going to be people out there who do replace the experience because of the fact that they see the old school acting. They see all these things and they like, oh no, that's all bad. It's all shit anyway. And they're not able to separate themselves because this game will exist. They're going to be like, well, clearly it's just going to convey the themes better and blah, blah, blah. And there's an argument for that. And you might even be somewhat correct on that. But I God damn it, it is just, it sucks. It sucks because I think that they're just so wrong. It's a subjective point. I understand that. But I think in my heart of hearts, there is a reason, there is an intentionality behind a lot of the strangeness of Silent Hill 2. And whenever you watch like a behind the scenes video of it, you can see that Team Silent was so laser focused and intentional about every single element that they added. And I don't care what some random Reddit post from a guy who may or may not, like during an AMA is like, I think that's what people kept pointing to in the last video, was like, oh, by the way, this little thing about how everything was intentional, no, the acting was just bad acting because this one guy said so on Reddit, and I cleared it. It's like, yeah, well, I didn't see if he proved his credentials or not, so I'm just gonna go ahead and say that it was just some fucking dude on the internet saying that shit. So I would like to believe the headcanon that everything that happened in the OG was 100% on purpose, but that may or may not be copium. I will admit to that. But it's not even just that, right? Because if it was just that and the game ended up being really good, and I would relent and say, okay, fine, go ahead and play through the remake. Do what you gotta do. It's good. It's a good game. They kind of fucked up the pacing really bad, and that's also another twofold problem. The pacing is bad because of two things. The ridiculous maximalist approach they took to the game, and the combat. And I'll get into each separately. So, what I mean by the maximalist approach to a game is, let's take Final Fantasy VII Remake, for example, right? FF7 Rebirth dropped the other day. And by the other day, I mean, last year and then a couple months ago with the PC version. But it dropped, and it added a significant amount of side content that was just not in the OG at all. And a lot of it is hit or miss. And not only that, but the world is also infinitely larger by comparison to what it was in the old school PS1 days. And that's cool on some level, but there's also a lack of direction after a certain amount of time. And you can see that when they literally increase the size of things, the pacing takes a drastic fucking hit. And the same can 100% be said of Silent Hill 2 Remake. I don't know if I said it earlier already, I'm going to go ahead and say it again. I do love that they made the town far more explorable. You can go off the beaten path a lot more easily. You can find a lot more context for the world. There's a lot more world building happening. You can get into a little bit more sillier encounters that are really cool. I like that they genuinely allowed you to walk around most of the town. That's pretty great. That being said, there is they did that same thing to every singular level of the game, as it were. I guess we'll call them dungeons. From the apartments to the hospital to the prison to the hotel even. Jesus Christ, the hotel takes forever. I think the mark of a good survival horror game is that you have a map and that you're not necessarily flipping back and forth between it every singular second trying to figure out where you're at. I think that good survival horror design allows you to create mental maps relatively easily by facilitating these landmarks that you can do in your mind and go, okay, this goes there, that goes there, blah, 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 blah. A really good example of this is Resident Evil. Resident Evil does this incredibly well. Both the OG and the remakes 100% nail that feeling of just like, okay, so that door is locked, I know that this key goes there, and I can just, make a route. Like, the idea that playing that game unintentionally turns most people into speedrun routers is really cool. And I'll be honest, the OG has this problem too. A lot of samey corridors, a lot of really dark and just, you're just walking through hallways half the time. But it's infinitely worse in the remake. They made these areas 10 times larger than the original. And it shows, and it sucks. Because half the time, I'm running around with 300 key items in my hand, like that one fucking meme, the old school meme of the guy holding, where am I gonna put all these fucking limes? Desperately looking at my map at every single moment I can get, just to figure out where the fuck I am, because everything looks the goddamn same, and there is little to no real, like, landmark references I can make, because it is just a real-ass interpretation of a hospital, or a fucking, like, an apartment, or a prison. The prison's a little better when it comes to that, because it's a lot more, like, eldritch in its design, but still. Like, my god, dude, this game on the first playthrough took me 20 hours, and it's not because the puzzles were even difficult, it was just because there was so much of the game to go through, and it was not fun after a little while. Half the fun of survival horror games is finding a new key to open a new area, to go and find more new keys. But they just did not do a really good job of... Or maybe they did, and maybe the OG really is like the worst when it comes to this. I don't remember that being the case. I played the OG relatively recently, and it does not feel the same way. You do still get lost pretty easily, like I said, but dude, fuck me. This game did not need to take me 20 hours. I did not need to do that. There is a section, particularly, that I was playing. I was in California at the time helping La with something, and he was watching me play it. And in the hospital, you go for like the first wing, and go into like the otherworld section by opening the key to that door and walking through, and it turns into the otherworld. And I was like, oh my god, thank god, finally some fucking progress. I've been in this one fucking wing for what feels like 45 minutes to an hour, just trying to make ends meet, going up and down 3 different fucking floors just to get through one door. And I get to that one door, and what happens? There's a box on the other end with 3 fucking padlocks, each with different combination keys and all sorts of different things, with chains jutting around in different directions showing exactly where you need to go and all the puzzles you need to solve for that. And then down the hallway is another fucking door with leading to an office with a hand that needs 3 separate fucking bracelets from the hospital, and it just gets so overwhelming after a little while, and it sucks. But all of that would be not fine, but I could deal with it a lot better if it wasn't for the fucking huge emphasis on combat that happens in the remake. So yeah, combat functions. It is a functionally better system than in the OG. You are going to just be able to actually aim your gun at weak points on a body. You're going to be able to dodge out of certain enemy attacks, and just, it's a better system, yes, but I wouldn't call it a fun system. It's not a dynamic combat system by any means. We're not parrying chainsaws and doing backflips off of walls, okay? You're James Sunderland. You beat 2 things up. Your demons and your wife. In that order. You're not doing much else. And because of that, I'm okay with the combat when there's not a whole lot of it. But for some fucking reason, even on the normal difficulty setting, even on normal, they put enemies in every single fucking room, it feels like. And you would think, okay, well, survival horror mentality tells me that I can walk past most of these encounters, which you would be right about on some level, except for the fact that if you do that, they'll just follow you out of the room, because it's a modern day game and there's no loading screens between doors. So they'll just follow you out. I'll actually ask Wolfen to post a clip here. There's a clip I actually have in the hospital itself where I'm like, okay, you know what? Let me just walk past these bubblehead nurses and hope for the best. And I do that, and all they do is they all simultaneously gang up on me and curb stomp my shit in and completely annihilate me. So that's just not working. So the only way to get around that is to kill every enemy you encounter, because otherwise they're just going to consistently be a thorn in your side. And these aren't zombies, right? They're not the Resident Evil zombies where they're walking slow. They have relatively fast fucking movement cycles, considering, depending on which enemy you're fighting. The mannequins in particular, which I will say, the positive I have with that one is I love that they decided to do something new with the mannequins where they actually try to run away from you in mid-combat and essentially like perch up on walls and hide in particular areas, or like crouch underneath tables and stuff like that. That one is really cool, and it would have been cooler if I didn't have to fight one every single 5 steps. Like, this feels like I'm fucking fighting a game with random encounters at the highest rate possible, like Persona 1 type beat, you know what I mean? Like, it was not fun after a little while, because most of the combat devolves into what you're gonna see on screen is hit, dodge, hit, dodge. And that would have been fine if it was barely a thing. The combat with the bosses, on the other hand, it's okay. You fight basically the same boss enemy 3 times. And that's basically true of the OG as well, for the most part. But my god, I really could do without all the combat. I almost kind of wish that the combat was infinitely worse so I could be more upset about it, but the fact that it functions and they decide to add it in at every singular possible angle they possibly can brings the game's pacing down directly into the fucking mud. Like, it's insane. But yeah, aside from those caveats, I do have to admit, on some level, the game is just better. It's just fundamentally a better and more functioning version of the OG, but it's not better in the sense of it being a better game. It is not an outright replacement for the original. And it's going to aggravate the shit out of me that people are going to 100% use it as such and look at the original like some sort of weird thing. And I kind of hate that. But I could be wrong, too. I could be entirely wrong. People could probably look at the remake and want to go back and play the OG for what it was, and find a new fascination for both of the versions. And that's also entirely possible. I guess, if anything, at the end of the day, I'm just glad that the game works for the most part, you know? I'm glad that we can turn around and say to each other, man, I'm really glad that when I played the remake, it didn't make me want to fucking tear my eyes balls out of my sockets, you know? And on that notion, it's kind of a triumph. It doesn't make me want to do that. But I also don't want to play it ever again. I would much rather play the OG 7 times over than pick up the remake because of the horrifyingly bad pacing issues and just what I find to be a generally more subpar experience in terms of overall direction and writing. But that's all literally my opinion, and I'm completely fine with being on the wrong side of history for this one. I just am. I'm gonna have to deal with it. I don't want to be a contrarian. It's in my soul. It is in my soul, and I cannot run away from it. You know, this has been kind of freeing, actually. I've been so worried about this video and the contents of it and where it's going to go, but I think this is okay. I think this summarizes how I feel about it for the most part, as well as it possibly can. So, hey, thanks for taking the time to like looking at it 40 fucking minutes to just listen to me ramble on about video games. I appreciate each and every one of you who likes, favorites, subscribes, and if you don't like it, just be nice to me in the comments. I bruise like a banana, or just don't say anything at all. I'll probably just block your comment. I'll be entirely honest. I'm kind of a bitch like that. So, yeah, much love to each and every one of you. We're gonna have more videos in the future. Shout out to Wolfen for editing this. I'm pretty sure he's gonna edit it. Right, Wolfen? Well, you're the best. Alright, everybody, I'm getting the fuck out of here. I gotta get some sleep. Y'all have a good one now.